the benefit much more than the contribute. So it's similar to what the economics, they say if you build a factory near a highway, you get a benefit the most. The same way that if you build a system is a standard of air, you will find visible advantages. So I suggest that when you build the data lake, because a lot of does not have to use XAPI, you need to stick to a standard, be consistent, and then in the long run you will find
Okay. All right, thanks. Obviously, I talked yesterday about two key points related to learning analytics, validity of learning analytics, and the other one was related to feedback. To me, what I'm actually seeing and what I learned in the last 2 days was kind of a nice overview of the things that are done here at NUS and also the things that are done at NIE in addition to some of these international. I'm just seeing quite complementary things. While at NUS, you have more focus on higher education and very practical things, and also very interesting computational things. Certainly, I'm sure you're also aware of the looking at cards. Better. And the other way around, things that are very interesting pedagogical fields, that detail setting, yet computationally, they can be much more sophisticated. And I think there are plenty of synergies in particular where I see them that in most of your cases, the work with NI can improve the validity of your analytics as well as also help you participate in design of and why it's worth trying to kind of record
So I think what I have to say is very obvious to what Dragon was saying. So obviously a big theme in my talk today was about the social aspects of learning, but I really want to go back to a comment that I made, sort of offhanded comment at the very beginning of my talk, which was about the different sub-communities that are represented in this workshop. And I was really happy to see, kind of, very similar to what Dragon was observing. I'm happy that there are people here who are part of core technology communities like ACL and machine learning, NUS, those places where there's the deep expertise and not just trying to skim the part that's easy to apply, but actually advancing that field. But then also people here who are deeply committed to learning sciences in its various flavors. And because I think that in bringing together people who are committed to their core fields to work together, it's more likely to lead to something that could be a major advance to the confluence of these fields. Although it's very hard, and I guess I want to offer my encouragement as I hope this local community continues to meet together, that when it's hard and when you find that these frictions inevitably happen, because they do, and because I think deeply interdisciplinary work is often not rewarded in any field, and yet it's so valuable in terms of the new kinds of developments that can come from it, I just encourage you not to be discouraged along the way, but to continue to work towards bringing those fields together.
Just follow up. But why should we do that? Like, can you help us understand what the deliverables that come on doing this high-interdisciplinary work? Like, what's it selfishly to the psychology person, to NIE, to the school computing? Just can you say a bit more about that?
Sure. So one thing is that I think for young people like you, Joseph, in your career, it could be there's a disincentive to do anything that's not rewarded by whatever is your core field, because you can't afford not to do the things that are going to get you tenure. But eventually though, you'll be past that stage. I think that the danger of not going there is that so you kind of make these very early advances and then it quickly plateaus. So for example, I just see, as a computational linguist, when I look at what people take from my field and use, I feel almost sick sometimes. It's like they think that, like, okay, we're going to throw sentiment analysis at it. We're just going to use the version that's in these like IDF tools that you can get off the web. Oh, we tried sentiment. Oh, it didn't work. Oh, there are 4 language technologies and has nothing to offer. Or, oh, I'm just going to use them because then I don't have to count words and I don't have to actually like dig into the language and it's going to do my work for me. Oh wait, it didn't actually generalize. Well, maybe language doesn't have anything to offer. I just, constantly hear these cycles, and I think the problem is that the conversation that's not happening is, okay, so here's a range of things that can be done, and here's what ideally needs to be done. Can we find a pairing? And I think that those are the questions that haven't been answered. If we can answer those questions, we'll be able to do new and exciting things. We don't know what those new and exciting things are yet, so I can't make a promise that's going to be offered as an incentive. But I just know that as a computational linguist, looking at what my field can do, being frustrated with where it tends to focus its energy as maybe not the most valuable kind of impact that I care the most about, but knowing that there's way more there that ever gets out and is used, and a desire to be able to connect to things like the social sciences, and even claims that we're going to transform the social sciences by doing it the right way. We have these very tools. I'm very sorry and embarrassed for my field that we make claims like that sometimes, but I still think there's something there that we would miss if we don't keep pushing for the answers. That's what keeps me going.
I would say the things I'd like you to take away from my work and my talk. First of all, the thing I started with yesterday is that no matter what we do, I think technology is going to continue to become more pervasive in education, and that's not necessarily a good thing. As well as data, we're collecting more and more data. That's not always a good thing. So I think it's important as we go down this path of more technology and more data that we're thinking about what are the questions we want to answer and what are the things we want to improve and how are we going to get there. I also would challenge you guys to have a great opportunity, it sounds like, with the data lake, to be able to have this really longitudinal kind of data at many different levels of granularity. That's going to open up opportunities like Caroline just said that we don't even know about, and I think there'll be some great discovery opportunities there for researchers to work on that data and find some things. I'm super supportive of trying to share data amongst universities and amongst researchers, as well as not just the data, but the analytics as well. And like I think I mentioned at the end of my talk, I have this dream that, the Educational Data Mining Conference and the Learning Analytics Conference, you'll have a paper that not only has the data as attached, which we're starting to see, but also has the analytics attached, and anyone can just replicate that. That would be amazing, I think, for the field. And just imagine as a PhD student if you could have done that without, the struggles I had reading papers and trying to replicate what was in those papers was definitely a large time consumption and very, it wasn't usually successful.
And you could say just a bit more about what's the payoff of doing that for like a faculty member or instructor at NUS? If they get involved in data, what examples of things they can do differently next week or like a month from now?
Sure. Well, certainly if you can get to the point where you're digging into the data, into your classroom and collecting data at the granularity where you're able to build these learning curves and things, you can definitely, we've seen dozens of occasions where we've improved courses, improved the tracking of courses, which really allow, the real power of the dashboard in a course where you're tracking knowledge components and being able to see what you think the student knows is that you can make those interventions on students who are struggling. But again, to make those inferences of who's struggling, you really need to have a good model to be able to follow that. And again, we've seen multiple occasions where we've gotten the model to the point where it's really easy for the teacher to make interventions early.
Okay, so one thing that's good to do is you've heard distinguished speakers, but they may not know all of you. So I invite all of you to have a chance to say a couple words about yourself, your affiliation, and then maybe one reason why you're attending this conference, this workshop, such that we can all think about whether there's a link between what you're doing and what you care about, and what are the main themes from the workshop. So I'd like to start on this side of the room, and maybe start with Rika.
I'm Rika from the Center for Development of Teaching and Learning. So I'm here at this conference mainly because I want to integrate pedagogy along with learning analytics and learning sciences, and be able to provide better support for our faculty members here in helping them improve their course and getting students to learn.
I think my key takeaway of this workshop, now I think I know better what computer science can do in terms of learning analytics. So I think compared with 3 days ago, I think my knowledge increased a lot in this. And I think this will also inform my future learning design. This actually this can do a lot. This is my key takeaway. And also by getting a lot of computer scientists in this area, I think there are a lot of possibilities for future collaborations. That's the other part I think will benefit from this.
Hi, I'm Isaac. I'm from Learning Sciences over at NIE. I'm a current doctoral student. So in my past life, I was principal in a K-12 school, and in my other life, I'm dealing with public policy and data science. Right? So I guess this is really very, very useful. It's a confluence of two areas that I've always wanted to see: exercising pedagogy, as well as the computational power of technology and data statistics. How can we bring that together in a meaningful way to improve outcomes for our students?
And maybe just to ask the follow-up that you could answer, anyone else could answer. Did you see things here or ideas you got that seemed that they were especially well in Singapore in terms of K-12 or university level? Or was it conversational tutors? Was it certain kinds of analytics dashboards?
I think I echo the comments from the panel that really, I think there's a lot of synergy that's possible already, and there's a lot of potential. Just, I think even with the data that NUS currently has, right, and that the various institutions currently have, I don't think we've even begun to really, look and mine that data. I think when you bring it down to a K-12 environment, it's a whole different set of problems, different issues. Part of it has got nothing to do with, in my mind, it's got very little to do with actually, the academic side of it. It's a lot more to do with how are schools conducting their lessons, how can we even begin to digitalize and capture some of these. I think Marie was mentioning just now about how a lot of the kind of face-to-face dialogue was happening, the collaboration that TIP environment wasn't being captured. Right? So, the nature of schools in Singapore, largely most of the information that we have, it's not in an e-learning environment, it's not digitized, it's not in a book environment, it's really face-to-face, and it's not virtual. So that's another set of issues that probably we have to address before we apply some of the potential of what we're talking about in this conference to each other about.
Yeah, thanks a lot. That's really useful to hear. I'm just trying to weave in all broader questions into the conversation. Does anyone else want to comment on that? Whether there were some specific things that you'd like to see happen next month, next 6 months, where it especially seems that it would be useful for researchers because they want to publish a paper on it, but also it would actually be practically beneficial. Is it, for example, to throw out some ideas that you can say that in terms of building a dashboard for chemistry professors class where they can see who's browsing what? Is that it? Is it actually able to mine data through data shop where you can X, Y, Z, just to get people started?
are there ideas that you would like to see happen, or you can just go out requests?
I was going to comment on your question afterwards, sorry.
See, the only point is to, stimulate.
Yeah, so, because I felt the same way. That in fact, that's a little bit why I asked Carolyn the question about transactivity. Is it really the same online and all that as it is in the classroom in real life? And because we don't have at NUS a lot of modes, we have more blended and more traditional. So we're looking at learning curves, but that's in an online environment mostly. But I would like to see learning curves for a particular classroom and then a particular course.
Actually, the ones I showed you were from the algebra content tutor, that was the geometry tutor. It was all done in class. Those are all done in classroom. It's certainly on the computer, but the way that program is implemented, it's a curriculum that they train the teachers, and the students are working 2 days a week in the intelligent tutor, and that's where all the data comes from.
So more of those kinds of things to really understand our blended environment or our traditional classroom where our faculty still insists on using those techniques. And I think that's what's those kinds of data is. We're going to try and move our faculty pedagogically. We need to, as Jorgen said, really create an environment where data is king. It's really valued in addition to one's own personal experiences, which is also valued, but what is also the value of this kind of data which could better inform our faculty to teach perhaps more pedagogically, it's sound, but scientifically consistent ways. And so I share that your suggestion that K-12 and now 12 to lifelong education is that we have to try to find a way to learn more on that. So that was one of my takeaways.
Hello everyone, I'm Nitin Chakraborty. I am a postdoc who started recently here working with ISIC at the School of Computing. And my thesis, well, it was on something not quite related to the learning sciences if you will, but my background is in computational economics / algorithmic social science and all that stuff. And one thing that that seems to have attracted the attention of our community in general, and some of my friends and myself in particular, is the idea of peer assessment, which has application or peer selection, if you will, which I'm aware of a lot of theoretical work in this area, spanning everything from paper reviewing to, of course, peer grading in MOOCs in particular. And one of the reasons why I attended this workshop was try to see, gauge the amount of interest, because from this discussion and what I overheard, there doesn't seem to be much interest, correct me if I'm wrong, in MOOCs, at least in Singapore. But it seems like the idea of peer grading, I know it has been applied in, so my PhD was from the US, and it has been applied in many classroom settings too in the US, and MOOCs use it all the time. So I just wanted to figure out if, what you think of this concept of peer grading. Do you think it's something we should trust or something we should go for, as in getting, students to grade each other, or, minimize the, the effort and time that it might require for an instructor to devote to grading, or is it something that you see, taking over, the very concept of student assessment in the future, the idea of getting peers to grade each other, or do you see that as something that that people don't necessarily trust, or that might be one of the reasons why people stop favoring MOOCs, or I mean,
Are you doing that?
I know, well, I know by looking into the literature on peer grading is that peer grading is good for learning, but not good for grading. Yeah, I actually had a teaching assistant for my course last fall who was very much into pedagogy and stuff and teaching, and he was great. He really helped me actually with my course a lot, and one of the things he actually persuaded me not to do any peer grading in the class. David Garrison. And so, yeah, so I think there is a lot of opportunity with peer interaction types of grading, but I'm not sure in terms of how good students are at grading this stuff.
Yeah, that seems to be the general idea because, I mean, in our community mostly comes in from a theoretical perspective where questions like strategic manipulation of grades, if you will, they come at the forefront. But there are more fundamental questions like the issues you addressed. It's probably not good at all. So I was just wondering whether I've only seen like strongly theoretical papers arguing either for or against peer assessment in these settings, but there doesn't seem to be. Sorry.
I'm guessing you ask this because you do kind of computational economics, this kind of works. We do these theory papers about how do you assign people appropriately. You can bet, John made great points, you can bet their questions that you could tackle. It's just a matter of figuring out some context where they are. Like, I know you probably didn't see Dominic's talk yesterday about teammates. If you actually look at it's online, I suspect you'd be really interested in that data set because he's got a pretty big data set. He's in your department, so he probably convinced you to test out some algorithm looking at that data.
Okay, that would be nice.
Because I think you're interesting questions like how do you bring people together? What guarantees are there about when they're making good judgments or not?
Yeah.
And there's some paper by Chinmay Kulkarni about grading Coursera that you might Google that might be of interest.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think there isn't only just one paper. So Chinmay actually did, as part of his dissertation, develop a system for peer grading in the context of his several studies. And so he'd actually be a great person to hold. He's one of our Carnegie Mellon colleagues. So I guess I just wanted to say, so I guess it depends because I'm getting a different sense from your question and from how you answered it, what the real question was, whether it's really about like, I don't want to do research in this area, who can I work with versus is this something that we're interested in here in applying, and also what are the issues with it. So my 2 cents on that is that I think that it would be a mistake to look for a wholesale answer on that. I think that there definitely is a lot of dissatisfaction with peer grading, but in some ways I think that the dissatisfaction is coming from trying to offload teacher effort onto the students instead of doing a careful or effortful job yourself. Just like the teachers who sometimes, and I probably never happens here in Singapore, but who use educational technology as a babysitter, and then are disappointed that their students don't get a lot out of the experience, that they didn't spend a lot of time thinking about how it's orchestrated with the larger classroom experience. I think that I would agree with John that I think that there are lots of ways in which drawing students into offering feedback to each other can be very valuable as formative feedback to help students learn. And it might not be a great way of being able to get an assessment or a measure of achievement that should be the certified stamp of approval given by the course. But I do think that there's a lot to be gained from encouraging opportunities for students to offer each other formative feedback along the way. And we have done some of those studies and have found, in particular in our recent work, value in doing it in a public setting. And I think if you're not using it as a high stakes assessment, there's no reason why it can't be made a public activity that students are offering each other feedback and working together on their feedback, but also experiencing a wide range of feedback, not just to them, but that they are exposed to receiving the feedback being exchanged for other students' work. So I think it's an interesting direction to push on in the future.
There was a paper too at Learning and Scale that you might have remembered that this past that they used alumni, I think, from the MOOCs to do the peer grading, and it actually worked. They got a lot more people than I would have expected to actually do it, but they saw it as an opportunity to continue engaging with people who had finished MOOCs and courses, and it seemed like an interesting thing. Actually, Ken and I, one of my colleagues, were talking about engaging our alumni from our master's program to do grading and see if they would.
I think they're too busy in their high-paying jobs.
Our graduates say it's so much easier.
That makes sense.
You raised a lot of interesting points. I think one distinction you brought up is attention to MOOCs versus on-campus blended. And one thing I would say that at least struck me about NUS is 30,000 people who actually want to pass the course, this is a much richer environment data set than any you have out there. Because there's a lot of randoms and moves. So I would just say you have to kind of scale it. You probably ask a lot of interesting competition questions if you look at CS 1001, whatever it is. But I bet people at CDTL know which courses have big enrollment. Because that can be a great test bed for doing some of this work you've done. I mean, just when I first came to MOOCs, I was like, oh wait, 1,000 subjects, this isn't be great. It is great, but it's not that there's 1,000 subjects. It's like 800 people who just showed up to see what was happening. 100 who are doing it for fun. 100 who are, you know, so it's a very unusual population. So I'm actually very excited about how you can basically do these with equitably balanced students.
Thank you so much, and I apologize for throwing a question into my introduction. So.
No, that's good. The most productive part of this is when we have a discussion about it. So I'd also like to invite our CDTL and IE colleagues to weigh in on that.
I have a quick question on the comment made by John. I didn't know that peer grading was that bad. So is it like when you're trying to give scores or letter grades, it's that bad, or let's say if there is an activity like grading an essay and providing some qualitative feedback, is that also bad? Peer versus instructor.
I think the studies that I've seen is where they add instructor's grade and then add peer grading and they just match it up.
What type of grading is this?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been practicing peer grading in my courses for quite some time, but on the following terms. That students are grading each other by not grading their grade.
Oh, okay, that's right.
And so I basically, but I realize even if you say I'm having these big students on grade or grade, you need to provide students with enough instructions. So you need to provide them time as well as you need to have a quality review. So you need to provide them sufficient samples. You need to provide details. And I never did in a MOOC, right? So I've been doing it, teaching a lot online and also teaching classrooms. And mostly I did kind of over the years, undergrad or master's stuff, right? And so my basically kind of perspective is that if you don't provide sufficient guidance, sufficient examples, etc., you will not be able to calibrate. However, once we have sufficient guidance and examples, everything, what we are able to do now, we always calibrate it to both the students that are grading the other students plus myself. We pretty much can calibrate to 10%. So we're all within the 10%, which I think is fair. And it's really hard to anyway. So anybody who knows kind of anything about quality risk is really hard to have perfect agreement. Even two teaching staff will hardly actually be within that range. So I'm not skeptical about these types of approaches. However, as you can see in this case as well, it's not an excuse for me to reduce my grading load, right? So I participate in grading of the students' reviews, plus also I also review the papers themselves, and I still maintain the right to perhaps sometimes override some students' reviews and grades. So that was pretty much about it. Of course, this approach, the extent to which is helpful, it's probably not, because I'm new teaching usually class up to 30 students. And so the question becomes how you kind of maintain this level of quality assurance with a bigger pool. And maybe it's something for grads, maybe it's for students to kind of do. In the same way, I think it's a similar challenges we have for our peer review then it comes down to in terms of academic publications.
Just want to add to about, I've seen classes here in NUS with a grade that nearly 200 students using that sort of peer grading, but again, the amount of guidelines given, the rubric that he talks about for different things that someone has to look at, and it's the same rubric that the instructor uses as well. And they also have some sort of prelim work done even before the one that's being considered. So there are various things that you can actually do before you start employment, and there are bigger classes actually doing such peer review that you can take a look at.
Yes, I teach statistics and psychology, and I actually fail 30% of them. I do think that I trust my student grade. I was likely someone student would fail. I think will qualify. And also give the colleges, give other universities whose students are non-traditional students, whether educational or preschool, that's good. So really, again, applying to the student. And also the nature of the courses.
I was surprised initially because in discussion forum, what I observed in most is that there is this phenomenon. When there is a verbal question, someone comes in and posts their answer and calls for feedback, and there are a bunch of people either agreeing with them and saying with them, some of them provide really good feedback for the verbal. So if that is the case, then the peer feedback, I don't know if it's grading, but the peer feedback must be good. But again, people who are participating in forums are.
I think you also said that, you know what, there will be a good response, but there's also bad or no response.
Because frequently when peer review is used in a MOOC, it's part of everyone's responsibility to participate in it. So lots of the invisible students are in the pool of people who have to offer people grades.
So that is a nice, lot of noise.
Yeah, probably more noise than signal, unfortunately.
Can we come back to the main thread? So maybe we can, since we have the microphone, maybe you can say what you got that great takeaway from the last couple of days.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a PhD student here. So the main takeaway is one of the reasons I'm here is to get visibility for my work. So I feel that I'm getting some sort of exclusive attention from the leaders of the field, which is very difficult in a conference setting. I have met Dragan before when I was in EDM, and he was a keynote speaker that was very hard to get going here. That's hard. And it's hard for them to make them remember us after we go away. I mean, that is a pressure. As a PhD student, you are not going to be publishing at every conference in a year. Postdocs or professors can do that because they work with students. So they are there at every conference. As PhD students cannot be publishing at every conference, right? So that's a big takeaway for me. What else? Okay. Meeting NIE people. So I didn't know that NIE was doing this much research and that we quality data that would be subjected to competition analysis. So that's something I come to know of, and I take note of Dragan's criticisms as well in terms of validation and the necessity for models to address theory. Yeah, I take it as a voice of the learning analytics community rather than just thanks.
I think for me, coming from a technology background, it seems like the more things change, the more they stay the same. I think for me, many times in my career, I've been asked to go try and aggregate data together because it seems like everybody builds their own servers, sets up their own databases, and it causes problems with reliability. You can't share best practices. And at some point, many times I've had VPs say, go get servers out from under people's desks and figure out what the right answer is to share best practices. And I wasn't very surprised when it came to the NUS, you looked around, there were a lot of different servers with a lot of different data. And it's a very similar process of trying to integrate it all together. Two different groups will use slightly the same word to mean different things, or the opposite of that. So I'm still always very interested in how all this is going to come together. But then at the same time, we're producing new data all the time. Right, so we have lots of people doing innovative things around Singapore, sending people off to other systems. So I've enjoyed getting asked a lot of architectural questions, right? From LTI to Storm to now XAPI, and other people look at like, what's all this data going to look like? How do we get it all back into one place so it doesn't just keep splintering? And then the last thing for me, I'm always very interested in seeing what does good evidence look like here in Singapore? Like, what is evidence of learning? We have a lot of people doing a lot of stuff. It's getting easier and easier to build systems. I know sharp students who can throw up an e-learning platform in a couple of weeks in the FYP project. It's easier and easier for them to log stuff, producing a lot of data, but you still don't know if good things happen, right? So it's that how to keep this accelerating ability to build stuff, hopefully closing on the learning science and producing interesting evidence. And I'm still not quite sure what the right dashboard or chart or pre-evidence looks like. And it could be a fool's errand. One person told me, Chris, it's going to be 50 things. Just stop looking for the top 2 or 3. Yet still, when you go to try and build something, you want to pick whatever, I guess, the biggest impact will have. So if you're ever looking at building dashboards or what the evidence looks like, or if you ever see an example of something you really like and you'd like more tools that produce charts, dashboards, whatever it is that look like that, please give me a call. I'd love to talk.
So maybe I'll just start with a brief introduction. I'm Doris, a researcher from the Center for Future Ready Graduates. So basically what we do is prepare the students as early as when they first came in for the workforce. So I think I come in with a very different perspective. So basically there are 2 purposes why I came to this workshop. So firstly is in terms of research. I want to know how I can incorporate some of the learning analytics into some of the research that we do to help us in terms of scalability. And next is in terms of teaching, because my center actually offer courses on soft skills instead of like hard skills. Because the workforce is changing, a lot of automation is going on. So sometimes the employers feel that the hard skills in terms of knowledge and skills are not enough anymore. They require soft skills like empathy, resilience, curiosity, for instance. So we actually offer courses to prepare students in these areas. So this links to my next point. So throughout this workshop, after attending so many different seminars, a question that was running through my mind was, how can I apply all this into a soft skills practice? Because a lot of this technology, learning analytics are based on academic subjects like mathematics and science, where there are correct and wrong answers. For instance, data show in terms of the learning curves, or also data, how the agent can develop and all that. So the other question that I want to ask the keynote speakers is, how do you think we can incorporate this in the learning of soft skills?
Just some quick context for those of you who are not from NUS, you may not know what the Center for Future Ready Graduates is. So it's a upgraded, steroid boosted version of a career system. So it's basically an NUS-wide resource that students tap into to get recommendations and guidance for career counseling and for module selection. But they also have this Roots and Wings module, which is open to all of the NUS compulsory module, if I'm not wrong.
It's not related, that most of them go through from year 1 to year 2.
Right, so they have this curriculum which has some of the soft skills that as was mentioned.
Right, so soft skills, I mean, I was a bit confused with the question because we basically asked soft skills and I have different meaning from, say, humanities where things are not clear, right? Or many people actually refer to science as kind of always the same answer. But I always told my courses in software engineering. Software engineering is never the same answer. It's a wicked problem, and we know that there is never ending cycle of software development. And so for me, basically one of the key skills that I wanted my students in software engineering to develop, of course, is in addition to some of these core ideas, was critical thinking. Right? For me, that was essential. And so one of my teachers says,
can you say what you mean by critical thinking?
So it's a different type of operationalization, but to me, it's really synthesis of different perspectives that you can come trying to articulate meaningful hypotheses that are coming from different sources, including that are coming from computer-generated ideas, and then trying to test hypothetically some of these ideas of different criteria. Examples are also going into the practice and determining that. So this is how we operationalize critical thinking. We also use a specific instrument for that when given that we're doing these types of things in the model which is called inquiry, which is developed and proposed by Terence and Randy Harris. And so, so in that context, analytics was used for us to understand the extent to which our parameters are, first of all, effective to support students towards the development of critical thinking discourse. Right. Secondly, we were also using computational methods that were trying to such an extent, really automate the process of mass analysis of that discourse and trying to classify the messages students were coming with.
And so basically the outcome is twofold. Not only did we manage to automate to a certain level of accuracy that this course, we also managed from the educational perspective to better operationalize the instrument which was used for assessment of that particular type of scale, right? And so it was really interesting that when you basically say what are some of these computational kind of features that were relevant for the type of discourse, and we found something that you expect by such, for example, coherence of discourse, or for example, the number of concepts that students were mentioning, they were basically reflecting a higher level. So critical thing. But also, given that it was a kind of in our cases, we used lots of software engineering courses, we wanted to engage students into that debate. All of a sudden, words which were related to cost were also quite reflecting a higher level of discourse, which made sense. Simply because students were trying to find optimal solutions, and they were debating what would be the cons and pros of a certain idea. So that's only one example of the things that could be done in this particular space. I know of some examples, and we also do some work with respect to, for example, self-regulation, the extent to which we can assess student self-regulation or the effectiveness of the study strategies that they are using.
And Dragan, could you say a bit about what that might mean, especially in the context of undergrad students doing chemistry or physics or something? Because people probably don't have literature.
Oh, perfect. So there are actually several lenses you can move into the kind of self-regulation, the ways that you can actually try to assess the processes students are engaged. One lens is that you simply look into the effectiveness of the study strategies students are following. And so, for example, we know from the literature that in educational psychology there is something which solves our difficulties. But on the other hand, we also have desirable difficulties. So kind of the author in that area is Robert Bjork, who's from UCLA. But we know, for example, that there are certain passive and more bottom types of strategies. So, for example, trying just to read and reread it, or the long-term kind of memory retention is obviously important for reading condition, right? But then engagement into all sorts of kind of self-testing opportunities, trying to also deeper engage also in spaces, certain activities and spaces, certain practice is always leading to better learning outcomes when it comes down, even not only kind to basic kind of factual knowledge, but also quite procedural knowledge. Experiments and studies were done even in surgery, right? And goes to even that area, but also goes even in the areas such as arts, right? So there are some of these things. So ideally, the student, if you have blended and flipped classrooms where students need to do certain kind of work, then you want to understand the extent to which students are effectively leveraging some of these opportunities. So, for example, we have certain life formative opportunities that are provided to your students. We also have some of these opportunities that are more summative. Also, you have some of your groups that are some basic content interaction. So, with the learning elements, we are able to first of all to engage in strategies students following. What is their relevance in some of these activities? And more important to me is also how they are changing and adapting these strategies over the course of time, and especially in comparison to some of these major events that we have in some of the courses, right? So we are using them, these types of information for type of feedback that I took as well. So I can actually use this type of insight as the kind of output that we provide to teachers based on which they can generate formative feedback back to students, right? That's one of the types of things. We are also equally interested in the kind of deeper assessments of the kind of metacognition. The students are being engaged in the ways how they are activating particular types of self-regulating processes. In that context, and we are really kind of interested in the extent to which students are effectively planning activities, the extent to which they are setting goals, and also how effectively they are monitoring and returning back and forth, say, to certain tasks that they have, and also objectives or goals that were set for that. And so you can also use analytics to do that, and based on that, not only can you potentially see and view that process by the instrument and see why there are potentially missing gaps in their self-regulation, but you can also think in terms of, for example, course classes, the way how they are affected and how you can promote in terms of pedagogical interventions, that students are spending more time planning and monitoring of their own learning, and thus promoting that.
So just to build on what Dragan said, so I think it's very true that analytics isn't specific to work in math and science, and that there has been substantial work on things that can be called soft skills that you can find within that field. related fields. I think that it would be a mistake to take anything like analytics, machine learning, or whatever, and treat it as a black box or one monolithic whole. I think it's even soft skills itself, and I think that part of what Dragan was getting at when he asked you, what do you mean, was about trying to find out within that broad scope, what are the specific aspects that you would want to assess. For example, some people consider collaboration to be a soft skill. Other people would say that it's a multi-dimensional construct with many sub-skills and on a much more fine grade level. Dragan mentioned one particular theoretical framework for thinking about soft skills or student positioning within a learning community. But there are many of these kinds of frameworks that might privilege different aspects. And so for you, as somebody who's working in an applied space, if I understand Joseph correctly, trying to build this resource on campus, I think it might be strategic to think about what is it that you really want to be able to achieve and provide to students, and then to identify particular work that focuses on those things. Because what I have seen is that there aren't pre-packaged solutions that you can just take as a whole and say, okay, there's this thing and it solves my problem. I think there are many researchers who have aspects of their research that could feed into the work that you're doing. I think it's going to end up being a collaboration to reach out to those researchers that have done work that most closely connects with whatever are the specific goals that would further the work that you're doing. But I do think that it's going to end up, soft skills generally speaking, are displayed in a social context and are supported within relationships. And so then I think it's going to end up being some kind of social setting. If you want to be able to apply analytics, it's much more convenient to at least have some aspect of what students are doing be online so that you're tracking what's happening. Because the ability to be able to do an assessment in a face-to-face, a speech-based interaction, although it's not impossible, and we've done some of that work relatively effectively, at least for pairs, but you're really much more constrained in being able to attribute an assessment to a particular student within a group in that kind of face-to-face setting. So for practical reasons, and be able to set up a setting in which you can collect data to do the assessment and to offer the support using the kind of technologies we talked about could potentially require some thought.
Yeah, and thanks so much for asking that question as well. It's great to hear these kind of practical questions. And sometimes they can be a bit intimidating to ask a bunch of people who are going to cite 200 papers, but I think it's exactly the right question to ask.
But maybe can just clarify. So basically the soft skills that I'm referring to is more of the psychological kind of constructs like empathy and resilience. And usually how we assess it are through self-reported assessments. So there's no right or wrong answer. It's more of the degree and extent of that particular construct. So for instance, like data shock, the learning curves, so it's really based on one question. So do you get it correct or wrong? What's the probability? What's the rate? But in terms of self-reported assessments, we might not be able to do that. So we might have to, I think this question has been asked, like what do you define as the outcome measures? So we might need to think of a different way or from a different perspective to conceptualize what is empathy, for instance. Can we really measure through self-reported assessments?
And to summarize kind of what was said before, I think it is possible to build some sort of assessment or some activity that could assess the skills that you want, and these soft skills have been activities. And if that's the case, then in theory we should be able to measure it. If we can measure it, in theory we should be able to create learning curves. I'm not saying the data shop would be the place to do it, because you may not have the number of opportunities and the simply binary correct, incorrect. But there's other ways to build learning curves with scalable information as well. So I think it is possible.
I'm trying to approach this from a different angle. One is from the alpha courses perspective, what measure these courses specifically soft skill or hard skill. But actually right now, there's a framework called competence. And holistically, looking at the person's skill, they call it KSA, knowledge, skills, and ability. So I think if you consider define a person or whatever course, say in this course, also 3 dimensions, they're probably not independent, but they certainly have different emphasis. I think the knowledge is probably more like a softer skill kind of thing. The skill is something that you know, and the ability is how to apply. So that's actually, there's trust me, there's a lot of discussions around this. Okay. They actually have a competence framework. You can find people ADS or EDA. So this is for my understanding of how to understand those 3 things. And I think the soft skill is more fundamental. But even if you math is a hard skill, you do not understand. No knowledge, you know how to do it, like after an hour or 2, you forget. So soft skill is more knowledge and understanding. Now, in terms of the way that we do the human system, auditor is starting with soft skill. So, for example, we study qualitative physics. We're not really studying physics or geophysics. We study qualitative physics. Asking the reason is situated in kind of reasoning, and that's something that we think that's at least needs to keep some knowledge. Ask deep reasoning questions. So that's if I understand you correctly, so if you train that knowledge, soft skill more and conceptual understanding at a higher level instead of the focus on hands-on or specific kind of skills. I'm sure that answers your questions.
And maybe I think one thing that came up is, things you might think of like soft skills or empathy. There's literature buried somewhere that's all on that. So can I ask you to all free associate, or just some study, free associate some paper on Google right now that might be of interest to someone who cares about this, like driving maybe something mentioned self-regulated learning or carbon. Can I just ask you to throw out something?
If my wheels are spinning on the, learning curves, is there anything magic about a binary logistic regression? It seems to me that if you just think, but maybe this is only like a math nerd way of thinking about the whole thing, but it seems to be, that a problem, I guess what I'm trying to get at, is that oftentimes you come to workshops like this and people display the work that they're doing now, and they've made choices to focus in a particular area, and it's convenient for a large space of problems, just using learning curves as an example, to use a binary logistic regression to fit the shape of the learning. And so we use it standardly, and then it can come across as though, well, you can only really measure the learning if they're binary events. But honestly, if you kind of take a step back and think about it from a statistical modeling standpoint, why does it have to be a binary logistic regression? There are ways of achieving those properties that make that an appropriate choice in this context in other ways. But I think it highlights the reason why it's important to have the conversation, because if you are a researcher that focuses specifically on soft skills, and that's your expertise, then you might not be able to think about the math and all of the assumptions behind the specific formulation to be able to know. But I think it's a mistake and I see people doing this all the time, wanting to be able to do it all themselves. That's the tendency. We go into our little silos. But let's be open to continuing the conversation. So I think I would just encourage people not to assume that what you've seen is all that can be done, but that's what we're doing now. But we can always play around with the parameters. So it's good that you asked the question: can learning curves be applied in this context? And I think that we, have a lot of ideas about resources that are available and ways that things can be adapted. I think anything is possible. It's just a matter of exploring the space.
But then I just like to add to what you said. We never use learning curves. We never use any algorithms that are related to that. It's not because we think anything bad about them, but simply because of our interest and the work is not related to that. We typically tend to use lots of different unsupervised methods that are trying really to learn. And they can have as many categories as potentially data, sure, or as many as we can potentially interpret based on the findings. That's one thing. The other thing is also, I think one way of asking is not just a question for learning question also for psychologists and psychometricians as well. So for example, on the notion of empathy or similar types of things, I know some really interesting work which was done originally at McMaster University. They actually developed a company which is called Casper, and the solution which is trying to test medical doctors or candidates for medical schools of medicine. And they give them lots of, like, they situate in a particular case. Like, for example, they are asked to be like sex associates. And there's a clear policy for that they need to kind of no return policy, right? And then 2 or 3 days later, the person comes in and says, oh, my kids didn't really like it, I don't have much money, and I return it back. And so then it's a decision on that, and it depends what they decide. If they accept it, then they put also lots of moral dilemmas on themselves, as well as in the future interaction with their supervisor, right? And that's how they are assessed. So it's not really just self-reported, but it's really kind of almost problem-solving type of activity where you are assessing something which is a dispositional type of thing. And for that kind of sake, I mean, really learning analysts are not those who can really help much. You need to really work with a situated problem, also in cooperation with the psychometrician and potentially learning analysts or education data miners can help them to determine certain initial patterns that are emerging from such approaches.
And something that might help is pretty much resonating with what you're saying is 2 things. One is self-report. In a Killinan's paper from Educational Testing Service in 2010, and also OECD got Bill Lucas and Guy Claxton in Europe to work on a framework for formatively assessing creativity, amongst which creativity has resilience and grit. And so there are just a few things to surface, and taking that and ETS this paper, so then if you write me, I mean, we can exchange cards, I'll send you some of these papers and research on these non-cognitive skills, or I mean, sometimes we call it soft skills and range. Just to point out a couple of things is that the measurement is a real issue, all right? The validity of the measurement is a real issue, and that we need to push beyond measurement to also characterization. So what that means is, of course, we continually have to check the validity of the measurement, but we need to push beyond self-reports. It's way overweighted in disproportionate self-reports, and that's only one dimension. And I think what learning analytics, at least conceptually and technologically, can contribute is the multimodality and the multidimensionality of sources of data and new methods to analyze and reconceptualize, and it's a real journey of work that takes more than one. I think that's why I'm happy to share some of those resources with you. And along the journey, I feel we're trying to do that. The second thing I think, though, is in part of our learnings is that creativity, collaboration, communication, they are established fields with 50 to 100 years and 4 journals, in that construct in and of itself. And sometimes we tend to, in the knowledge economy skills and Singapore rhetorics around soft skills, like you put them on the 21st century competencies and think that they can be one. I mean, they're closely interrelated. So I think, but so understanding that one of the debates is that it is generally, it's not generic skills. The workplaces tend to see these as management competencies or PMAC competencies or generic skills. But often there are some generic elements of these skills that they are very much domain specific. So a doctor or a nurse or a teacher might display empathy and grit in very different ways. It's very situated and contextualized. And so those need to be taken into account in the measurement and the development, especially in guidance counseling and preparing future-ready workplace, sort of productive movements. So it's definitely a worthwhile question in the field of work.
I think one big theme that has come up is having practical problems and connecting them to literature. So to put you on the spot for a second, Dragan, can you just pre-associate the people who are talking about planning self-regulated learning so I can just show people physically, look, here's how you get to jump into it. So what's a paper someone should read on self-regulated learning that might be of interest? Should I just Google Scholar self-regulated learning as video? That's what I'm about to do, is to stop me and visit that.
You can add that in Roger. One of those words in terms of branches. Understands quite some time. externally, and the words of scaffolding of self-regulation. So, I mean, even some of these like soft skills that we wish, we need to scaffold. If there are skills that they can be learned, then we are learning something that we need to also scaffold their learning as well.
So I think because one year I got from what Carolyn said is that you might read a paper here or there, but what the researchers have in their head can go well beyond that. So here's an example where Dragan just basically found this paper. Maybe it's relevant, maybe it's not, but I think what Carolyn was really encouraging and what Jen was also pointing out is having these conversations where you can get practitioners kind of working with researchers would be really powerful. And it's easier for a practitioner. Why read 400 papers when you can speak to people who either wrote the papers or have read them, And the grad students, as amazing as all of they are, the grad students would be also fantastic and they'll have a bit more time. So I'm just thinking, one thing to really think about is how do we support that in a more systematic way? Because it just happened here. But, can they just randomly email someone and they can respond? Maybe. But we could think about how to facilitate that. And at least I'd be very happy if you have questions. You can email me or Min, and we won't know all of it, but I can also point you to is it one of these people, is it someone else? Or, in a perfect world, we have a mailing list of researchers who are willing to answer random practical questions if you then let them do a research project with you.
If I could just add a couple words to what Joseph had said, I do think that sometimes there's a hesitation to contact a professor, and it is true that professors are busy enough, and it's possible to email and get answered, and probably you have a higher success rate with graduate students who are also lazy. But I think that it's also true that we're just regular people, and we love it when people are interested in our area of research, whether it's our specific research or just the area in general. So I just want to encourage, especially your younger colleagues in the audience, please reach out at conferences or otherwise, because we're a community, and that's what we're here for.
Okay. Hi everybody, I'm a computer engineer, and unfortunately now my PhD studies in information systems department here in the NUS. My research interests were always in the field of e-learning. In fact, I enjoyed it. It was my pleasure to be in this workshop in the last couple of days. One of the most important things that I get from this workshop is to know about the data shop. In fact, I'm sad that I didn't know about it earlier. I spent a lot of effort during the last year to aggregate all of the data and to build output to find the suitable data sets. But my concerns here with data shop specifically is it seems it focuses especially on American case, I think, from American educational institutions. So it raises always the very old question that, okay, if you make a conclusion from data sets from America, does that apply to everybody else? And this is one thing. So at the end of the day, I think maybe it's a good idea for a very good course like this to maybe encourage some other institutions from other parts of the world to also publish the sets in your website. I'm aware that some
It's begging everyone. It's really hard for Europeans to share data. They have a much stricter set of rules. But yeah, I have encouraged. I continue to encourage anyone to give free data or become part of it. And we're hoping again with this more distributed method and setup that more people will join. But yeah, it's been a constant struggle. Incidentally, there are some data sets where they actually ran the same studies in multiple countries looking at cultural effects. And I can point you to some of those studies. There's certainly some math ones where they did it in South America, in the Philippines, and in the United States, both inner city and suburbs of the United States, and kind of compare the differences there. Yeah, it would be great to have much more culturally relevant information. Another thing to notice, we don't really track that. It would have to be something I know. A lot of the demographic information gets lost in data shop because of our IRB requirements. And that's something, again, with the LearnSphere, we've got a little bit looser and more opportunity to collect some of that data. We're going to start. We have that data for like the Carnegie Learning data sets, we know where the schools were, so you could get the zip code, you could have, average income. There's data that would be interesting to a lot of people that just can't expose right now.
Hi, I'm Vijay. I'm also from the Center for Future Related Stories. My key takeaway of what is very exciting for me is the initiative on data lake. It's exciting because, as a researcher, it allows us to triangulate method, data, as well as problems, because different data ask different questions, but sometimes the outcome that they are seeking for is the same. And I realized that when I was talking with teammates, Peter and what he was looking at is actually spear rating for teamwork and collaboration. And that is one thing that CFD is also looking at, because for us, collaborative skill is an important skill to prepare that for the workforce. And rather than we reinvent the wheel and ask the data, we want to look what data that has been collected for the past 5 years. So this is where the data link is very useful, I think, for many researchers, and that is exciting. And back to peer rating or peer grading, and building on what Doris shared about soft skills, one of the initiatives that we are going to do pilot next semester is that to do a 360-degree peer rating for soft skills. So this is not evaluation on performance or just giving feedback to the peers, but rather the students will have an opportunity to select their raters to help their own journey. So in a way, it's not a graded kind of assessment. And because students have project work from year 1 to year 4, so there are many opportunities for them to get peer feedback if they want to. Plus, they also do internships. So they also can get feedback from the industry. They also can get feedback from their professors if they want. So this is something that we are working on it. Hopefully, next January we will have some pilot. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Akshay. I'm a doctoral student here at engineers. I'm a teaching assistant. I came in here with a very open mind. I was very curious to see. Okay, I shouldn't really say I just came in with a very open mind because I'm really passionate about teaching. I want to see how research or analytics on teaching analytics can be really used in the classroom setting. A bit of background, I work in reinforcement learning, so I've been looking at papers and equations and all that. But I think this is one of the opportunities where I can see some things that we do in practice in the teaching setting. So in that sense, this is a very relevant place for me. I should also own up that I didn't attend all the sessions. I attended
it's okay, as long as you go on the website, you could be bus trucker or store and
yeah. So for me, the way in which the biggest takeaway, I guess, is this discussion when compared to all other sessions that I've attended, because there is so much of perspective on feedback and peer learning. I teach one of the classes which has the highest strengths one of the highest strengths in SOC.
Highest trends?
The class strength.
Trend? Oh, what's the word you're using? Strength. Oh, class strength. Okay, good. Okay.
Yeah. So.
Great. Okay. Highest class. Okay.
Yeah. So I want to give we do a lot of these peer reviews and the feedback sessions and all that. The way we do it here is we don't really ask students to grade anyone. We provide this platform. Of course, we use teammates. We use the platform to get students to think what better his or her teammate could have done, with also reflecting on what better he could have done. So I guess it's a very nice learning opportunity for students. And it's good to see that for me, when I did it the first time, it looked like a pointless exercise. I'll be very honest. Because we, as a TA, I look at all the responses that the students have, and I have to come up with something which will concretize it into a grade. Right? So for me, it was like a pointless exercise, mundane task. But over the years, I've come to realize that it's really a nice thing to do. And I've seen improvements in the students' attitude towards learning when this is done. It is not very apparent. I'll tell you as a very frank on that. It's not very apparent. But over a period of time, I've been doing this for 4 semesters now. I see that there's definitely an improvement in the way students approach learning itself. So it's a nice thing. So maybe I think this was my 2 cents to the discussion on that.
Yeah, can I say one thing too? I just want to make sure that maybe I need to step my comments back. There's a difference between peer review and peer grading.
Yes.
And I actually use teammates as well in my class on peer review, and I think peer review is important, and reviewing kind of who participated, what you did, what they did is important. I think when it comes to peer grading, where you're having a student grade an essay or grade a computer program, that's where they don't do as good a job.
I know. So we just have to, unfortunately, we have to wrap up soon. But I'm going to see if I do last person. Just say one. Okay. You are next.
Hi, I'm Dave. I'm from ALSET, and I thought it's very interesting that technology can be used to further engage students and further make them allow them to contribute to their own learning. I think that's really neat.
So I think just in the last few minutes, we're just going to close it. One is a thank you. And then also, just if you can humor me, let's just look at the schedule one time and everyone just reflect on what is their favorite talk or what did they get out of it. Because we had such a great discussion and I said reflection. I think just take a moment, look at it would be useful. So maybe do that first. So this is actually something that I do in my research, but I'm just going to walk through each of the talks and give you all a second to think, what did you get from this? And what did you enjoy most about it? Well, what was your takeaway? So we did get a lot done in the last few days, right? So we started off with the opening session where Min and everyone talked about ALSET, the data dictionary, Paul presented. Dragon gave the presentation on analytics. Teammates, always a big hit. Visual Algo, Archipelago. We were introduced to the magic of data shop. Someone presented about connecting instructors using reinforcement learning. Data performances as data. We had a really big overview of NUS and CIT and the vast scope of technology there. And really broadening to workforce development. And close with discussion of social networks and causal inference. And we had a discussion about like this yesterday. So today, finally finishing off, we had an opening with Carolyn talking about technology support, and a colleague coming to share about learning analytics. Bibas, who presented on mobile health, but got the most questions out of any section in education. Our NIE colleague on learning analytics visualizations. Moved to on discourse signals. Shannon presented on conversational tutors, as well as the importance of standards like XAPI. Wendy shared on automated assessment augmentation. And I'll give you just 15 seconds to think of what was your big takeaway from this whole discussion we had. I forced myself to wait before awkward for 15 seconds because they've said that that's exactly what you have to do when you make pedagogy. You have to look at someone's hand towards and comfortable with that's when people actually get reflected. So I think just in terms of thanking, we actually invited, there were 4 people from the SOC office who did a huge job making this happen. But since they're all very humble, they didn't want to come and get claps or anything. But Mrs. Ho and a huge team really helped out. So very grateful for that.
Let's give them a big hand anyway.
Actually,
you can send thanks to them personally outside.
they went back to the normal job.
Okay, yeah, so unfortunately they're not around here, but they did a tremendous job of organizing this conference. You know, Joseph and I are just sort of like the PC co-chairs, and they're the local chairs. So everyone who's done local chairing knows that that's a humongous effort, you know, catering to everything, and then last minute crazy requests from the PC chairs, right? So shifting things here and there, canceling things here and there. So I really want to give a big thanks to them again.
See, what's good is we can look at the YouTube video and we're going to replay that for them. And so I see a big thank also Bob Kamine, ALSET, and Chris Bush. So thanks again for being here to see.
So this was a brainchild out of the school computing. They said, you know, what are two important topics that this year we want to try to connect with the greater campus, you know, and so we thought, okay, well, here in the school computing, we have both computer science and information systems, so what do they align on? One thing they align on is education and social science, and I think actually our dean who attended at the tutorial session said, this is an area we're going to push on. So I hope you'll see as invited speakers that Singapore is going to make a lot of progress in this area in the next couple of years. And to that, you know, just the perfect storm. We had ALSET forming, and then Bob had approached me earlier this year to come on board, and now we are holding this joint workshop together. So this is the fruits of labor of ALSET and all the entire team really who's put together this effort. So again, thank you, Bob, for the support in bringing together the funding to put this workshop together.
Yeah. And especially one thing I'm grateful for is having this constant push for like, what's the practical impact of all of this work, how to bring people together. And I found Bob's been great in being really open and bringing these perspectives. And it's nice to have an associate provost with us for all 3 days. I don't know how you made the time. I guess who else we have to thank? Well, we definitely have to thank our invited speakers. John has come all the way out here, even when he didn't make it to EDM, so he obviously really cares. Carolyn had a harrowing 1 day of adventures in all kinds of random airports. Dragon apparently was in Hong Kong last Friday, but he still came back out to come and see us. And Shangin, well, Shangin, you were right in China, so no hard work, right? Shangin just finished hosting EDM and EIN for 1 full week. He was a local chair, and I now sympathize strong with him. So the fact that he had energy to come afterwards and do with us is really well appreciated. Thank you. And also thanks to everyone who attended, both in person as well as remotely. And we're hoping to sort of extend that audience because we've got all these things up. So ALSET, others can kind of share it out as another way to kind of really engage faculty. So thanks to the audience.
And so with that, we'd like to close. Oh, sorry.
Exactly. Yes. You beat me to it. I was going to let them get away with not giving some applause for the two main organizing cheerleaders of this event. I've really enjoyed this so much. It's easy to make time for it because everything was so relevant to the kinds of things I have to think about. So thank you both for putting together.
Can I just add to that? So you guys can't see me a lot because I just showed up 2 weeks ago, and so I'm kind of helping pull my weight. But I just want to thank Min so much, especially because Min normally isn't this loud and talkative. I would never, ever have thought to do this right after arriving, but Min was very ambitious and pushed me to help out with this. And also, it would have been impossible to run this kind of thing without Min actually getting everything set up. I never knew. Min was like organizing budgets, getting souvenirs to show up magically in the hand to people, contacting people via all kinds of flight arrangements with complicated budgeting requirements. And Min also provided a huge inspiration in terms of providing guidance about who to invite, who to bring, but also really letting everyone run very freely, you know, letting me sort of try and push something, letting student volunteers be very innovative. So I really appreciate Min putting in insane amounts of time, answering emails at 2, 3 in the morning when all of us are like asleep and exhausted, to really create the conditions for a tremendous workshop. So thank you very much.
On behalf of 4 of us from other places, we thank the hospitality and also the great conference you run. And we love
to have the final words, I have to say this is really a big team effort. You know, Joseph stepped on board, Chris has been instrumental in putting ALSET and Italy on the map, and Tuan, who's not here right now, he has other obligations, he was pulling all the CSS people, the business people, and econs people in. So it's really a big team effort. I know you hear this type of attitude every time you go to a conference, but you know, when you're in that seat, you really have a lot of people to thank. So I hope what we will be able to do is continue a bit more discussion over the final tea, but what we hope is with the greater audience like NIE and CFG and other folks here, we can plan for the next iteration of this conference or workshop in some ways to make our community more solid here in Singapore. So thank you again, and with that, let's close today's session. Thank you very much.